So, Paul Gilbert, welcome to Life in Six Strings. It's such an honor to have you on the show.
It's good to be here, and we've also been Juliet the cat's also here as well. Although she refuses to look at the camera.
I love it. You've got your mascot with you.
Exactly.
So, how have you been?
I've been good. I'm still bending strings. As long as I can do that, everything's pretty good.
I love it. I love it. So everyone that comes on the show, I always ask this question straight up to get us started. So why guitar for you?
Well, I could stand up. I'm not standing up now, but when I was a kid, when I started, I really wanted to bounce around and jump and go crazy. And with guitar, you could do that. Where if you played piano or sat on the drums, it was, you were sitting on a chair.
Yeah.
Also, my uncle played guitar, and he played really well. So he showed me a couple things that helped. And the Beatles look cool on the record covers, and of course Jimmy Page looked cool too. And then when I finally learned how to bend a string, then I was hooked. That was once I got that down, I couldn't stop.
So how old were you when you were able to bend like that?
I could sort of do it when I was about 11. I'd been playing a couple of years, and I couldn't believe it. I was just looking at my fingers going, I can't believe that you can get that Jimmy Page sound. And then for about the next year, there was the Ace Frehley lick that was like, and I couldn't figure out a way to play it fast. And the reason I couldn't figure out how to play it fast is there isn't a way to play it fast. But I would just sit there and play it over and over. And that was about a year of that. And there's really not a better way to spend a year. That was formed all the good stuff at my core.
I love that. It's funny because I pretty much spent the whole year just doing Gloria, with those 3 chords. And then I start really slow, and then you get faster and faster and faster and faster before your fingers are going all over the place. But there's lots of fun to be had, and you've obviously been having a lot of fun for many years. But there was this wonderful story that I read about you, and apparently when you were around about 15, you wrote to Mike Varney and said that you wanted to join Ozzy's band. Could he help? Is that true?
Pretty much, yeah. Well, I lived in rural Pennsylvania at the time, and this is, of course, way before the internet, where you can just send an email to anybody. And Randy Rhoads, I'd been a huge fan of his. I saw him live a couple times in concert, which was amazing. And I had learned a lot of those parts, and I was, for a 15-year-old kid, I was pretty well versed in that style. And at the same time, I knew that the chances of me joining Ozzy's band were very low. I didn't have great expectation, but at the same time, I thought, if I don't try, I thought somebody's going to join,
yeah.
and I could, I think I could play the parts, and I thought at least I have to try. Because if I don't try, it's always going to bug me, and I would always think, opportunity lost. So I thought, well, how am I going to try? I don't know anybody. I'm in this small town. I don't know anybody in the music business. I don't have Ozzy's phone number. So I had some guitar magazines, and Mike Varney had an article that had listed his address, and he said that he would reply to anybody who sent him a cassette of their playing. So, I sent him a cassette. I was playing, I think I played a Montrose song, played like Rock Candy. And, played it pretty good. And he called me back, and I don't think I mentioned how old I was in my letter. And so he was interested. He's like, hey, you sound pretty good. tell me about yourself, or and of course, then it was like this was still like the beginning of the hair '80s. You had to, everybody had to have hair, and he's like, do you have long hair? I was like, yeah, I got long hair. I got perm. It's just, I look like Guy in Def Leppard, and he's like, oh, cool. Do you have a good equipment? Like, yeah, I got a Marshall stack, and finally he said, well, how old are you? And he's like, I'm 15. He's like, Ozzy doesn't want a 15-year-old in the band.
Yeah.
So, it gave me really the beginning of my career, because Mike really liked my playing, and so he just said, keep sending me stuff. And by the time I went out to LA to go to GIT, I had made enough original material where Mike actually wanted to do a record with me, and that became Racer X.
That is absolutely nuts. That just goes to show how talented you were. And you mentioned GIT. How old were you? You were teaching there, weren't you? You weren't a student.
Well, I went to GIT when I was 17. I just gotten out of high school.
Yeah.
And it was a 1-year program, so I was a student for a year,
Right.
which was great. There were so many great teachers. I mean, there weren't that many rock teachers. It was like kind of at the tail end of GIT being really focused on jazz, and that was great for me because I knew nothing about jazz. It was really nice to learn some stuff from that world. Um, but that was wonderful. And then also at the school is a great place to meet people. That's where I met Juan already, bass player from Racer X, and Harry Chaucer, who was the original drummer of Racer X. And then we found Jeff Martin. He was referred to us through Mike Varney. He was in a band called Surgical Steel out of Arizona.
That's crazy, isn't it? But did you teach there as well, though, eventually?
Yeah, right after I graduated, we kind of asked each other. I was getting ready to ask to see if I could get a teaching job there, and be like, it was like the same day I was going to head down and say like, hey, you guys, do you need a rock teacher? And then the same day I got a phone call. They're like, yeah, we'd like to see if you're interested in teaching. So we were on the same page, and it was. This has nothing to do with music, but it's a hilarious story. My mom used to send me these care packages, and I think it was around Halloween or something, and she knew that I liked black licorice jelly beans.
Okay.
And so she sent me, because my family was still back in Pennsylvania. She sent me this like big thing, like a giant package of black licorice jelly beans. And I'm like 18 years old, so I can still eat candy and be okay. And I ate, I don't know, like the whole thing of black licorice jelly beans. And this is right before I had my meeting with GIT guys so I could be the teacher. And I looked down at my hands, and my hands had turned black from eating the jelly beans. And I'm like, oh, I better wash my hands. So I went into the bathroom to wash my hands. And then I was like, and my lips and my tongue were black. And I'm like, oh no. So I'm washing off my lips with the soap, but you can't really wash your tongue with the soap. And actually it didn't really work. Like my lips were just kind of spotty.
Oh, no.
And so when I went to the interview, I was sort of like, trying to hide my lips.
Yeah.
I'm really petite for school. And but anyway, I still got the job. But that's my weird story. If you've got anything where your lips have to look normal, be careful of those black licorice jelly beans.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, bless your mum for sending you those. That's so sweet. And of course, you've been in quite a lot of cover bands, haven't you? So you've done the Beatles, the Who, Zeppelin, Rush. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Anything off there?
Well, those were ones that Mike Portnoy organized. But before that, I mean, when in the GIT days, when I was a teacher, I used to go in and do a lot of guitar seminars. I mean, I would do like one-on-one private lessons, but once in a while they'd say, "Oh, can you do like a seminar for the whole school?" And I did a couple, and I started to get really tired of doing them because I was just doing like, okay, here's this lick, and here's lick number 17, and I just got bored of the format. And I thought, what people really need to see is some music. So at the time, my roommates were Russ Parrish, who is now his stage name is Satchel. He plays
Oh my God.
with Steel Panther.
Yeah.
And he was my roommate, and also Jeff Martin, who is the singer of Racer X. But Jeff's also a really good drummer. And so I would get home from being on tour with Mr. Big, and I'd say like, "Hey, I've got to do this seminar at school. Let's learn like 25 songs in a week, and we'll just do a concert." And we would do. I mean, we would sort of pick songs that we knew from listening to the record, but we maybe didn't know the chords. We'd put together. It would be like Bowie and Hendrix and Judas Priest and the Animals and the Beach Boys and Todd Rundgren, and just real mishmash of pop and glam and 70s glam, Deep Purple, just all kinds of Black Sabbath, just everything you could think of, and we would just like cram it and then do these concerts. And that band was called the Electric Fence, and of course you can find it on YouTube once in a while, but that predated all the Mike Portnoy stuff. But it's almost like being a classical musician, where basically if you're a classical musician, you're a cover band musician.
Yeah.
You're not playing your own stuff. You're playing Bach or Beethoven, and you're playing the classics. And it's it's great music, and it's a great way to learn your instrument, and it's a lot of fun. So I still I learn cover songs all the time just because I love music. It's a great way to connect to it.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, how important do you think that is? Like learning kind of this, like you said, the catalogue of rock to your guitar playing. I think.
Well, I think if you want to be especially if you want to be an improviser, it's really you have to be fluent in that language.
Yeah.
And every style kind of is its own language. So you can take somebody who's really fluent in blues, and they might not have anything to say in classical, and vice versa, or take somebody who's really fluent in metal, but then they're not going to have much to say in jazz, and because it's a different language, and you have to spend time with it, learning the things that make that language sound the way it does. And so if you're not fluent, if you haven't spent time with it, you can still kind of like slowly put something together. And I think actually people who are no, I'm wrong. I was going to say people who are writers sometimes don't learn a lot of the people's songs, but man, look at the Beatles, who are universally like the most famous. I mean, they're my favorite. I want to call them the best, but some people may go, no, Metallica was the best. But whatever, I'm going to call the Beatles the best writers of the last century. And all they did was learn copy songs. I mean, that was their whole.
Yeah.
I've got a book about it called "The Songwriting Secrets of the Beatles," where the writer just goes through and shows this is where they got this is from the Everly Brothers, this is from Chuck Berry, this is from Burt Bacharach, and they put it together, and they did it by instinct because they were fluent.
Yeah.
They that had become the language that they spoke, and you don't have to think about it if you're fluent. That's the whole idea, is to spend enough time with it where you don't have to think about it, and it just naturally flows out of you. But you need to put in that time initially, and to me that's what I did as a kid. I learned a ton of songs, and I still do, because I still like to expand in other styles, and there's no way around it. You just have to develop your ear and where you're going on the instrument, and that's learning that language.
So how do you learn a new song now? Do you just listen to it and learn it that way? Or do you go on YouTube? Or do you go into, have you got a tab book? Or how do you do it?
I've always been an ear player. The only time when I'll go to YouTube or the internet is if it's like an altered tuning.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, a lot of the Led Zeppelin stuff is like that. Like when I did the Zeppelin tribute with Mike Portnoy, we did the Rain song, and I listened to it. I thought, you know what? I think he's using some kind of different tuning there, and that's like a different language. Like, man, I don't know where to put my fingers when it's tuned different. So I went on the internet and found that, and it was so easy. It was like, oh, that's the secret. So, but if it's regular tuning, then I tend to use my ear.
I'm so jealous of you guys that can do that with the ear. I think I would literally be sitting in my room all day long just trying to figure out the first note. What's that first chord? Like 24 hours later, I'm still sitting there playing it back. You got it or you haven't, I guess.
The nice thing is once you start to get fluent, you start to realize that everybody's really kind of saying the same thing a lot.
Yeah.
So I found, once you learn the bass part to obla di obla da, you start hearing that everywhere. It's like, oh, that's it, but it's just the other way. It's just obla di obla da, like kind of backwards, and obla di obla da is in there, and with their it's in boom boom. It's so you start to realize, like, just like when you're reading, you learn to read, and it's like, hey, there's that letter W again. I've seen that one before. So at first it seems like a lot, but after a while it's like, oh, it's just that same lick that everybody uses.
It gets smaller and smaller. You are right. And when you're playing, do you, because obviously you know your instrument so well now, do you visualize the fretboard, or are you just, your hands just know where to go?
The best thing is when you can just turn your mind off and just feel it. And that the more fluent you are in that area, the more you can do that. But at the same time, I'm always trying to learn new stuff. So, right now my project is learning a song in B flat, which is a horrible key, and trying to play over this major seventh chord, where it's like, or and that, obviously it's new because I just made a big clunker, but to try to, like, to not only be able to know the shape, but to be able to hear the shape. That's the thing, is like, it's one thing to be able to see a scale and to play a scale, but to be able to hear it and to sort of play it in the air and know what it's going to sound like, even without. And the nice thing about that, if you can start to do that, you barely need to hear yourself on stage. Because you just know, man, that's where the note is. I don't even need to hear it, and I know that's what it sounds like. Not because I'm hearing it from outside, but because I'm hearing it from inside.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's it's like, like a blind person who knows their way around their room. It's like, I know that couch is there. I don't even have to see it because I know it's I've had the experience. I know that, and that's it's really powerful. That's how in Game of Thrones, when the young Stark Arya, when she won the sword battle at the end and she was blind, she had superpowers because she couldn't see,
Yeah.
because she had to use her other senses, and her opponent hadn't developed those senses to the same level, and that's kind of what you're doing, is you want to get it where you can play without hearing it, without, you just know where it is, and that's deep. It takes a while to develop that, but that's like when it feels the best.
Oh God. See, that's funny because I've been given advice. Some people have said to me, you should try and play in the dark, or because I've sat there to try and do it with my eyes closed, but maybe you should do it without any sound as well, so you can't hear it and can't.
Well, there's all kinds of ways to approach it, and I'm because I teach so much, I'm trying to make it easier for my students, and the I've got I've got this way I'm thinking about teaching scales in the future, which is not teaching scales. It's actually teaching, like, these three colors, and it could be any three colors. It's not, just three different ones, and you put them on like a ruler, and you show, like, these are your three main things, and inside of there's other detail. But anyway, it's a work in progress. But
Find that people find it hard to learn scales then.
well, I think scales are better for the teacher because it gives you something to do, and you can. It's like busy work for your students, and you can, your students feel like, oh, I got this hard thing I got to learn, and the teacher's like, yeah, that's right. You got that. Before you can go any further, you got to learn that thing. But what I'm, especially from learning melody, is I'm realizing that scales is not. It's not really the end result, and what obladi oblada is. You know, to me, like it's much more useful to learn. And you learn that, like you really learn it deep. You learn it every key. You learn it like every string. You learn 5 different ways to play it. You learn what it sounds like. You learn different rhythmic variations, and you wouldn't believe how much that's in like real music. And then there's a couple more. You learn what is it, Sugar Pie Honey Bunch, or the Sugar Pie Honey Bunch. You know that alone. I can't help myself. Love you and nobody else. And that line, da do do da do do da, that's so important. That's in so much stuff. And if you're bogged down with the whole scale, I mean, that's inside of a scale. I can show you the scale where that lives, but you don't need all that baggage. It's like, just bring the stuff you need for the hike, and get good at using those basic tools. And then later on, you can label them with what it's the scale name. But you get like obladi oblada. That's a song by the Four Tops called "I Can't Help Myself," and maybe you get like "When the Saints Come Marching In," which is also 666, the number of the beast. I left alone. My mind was blank. And when the saints come marching in, it's just
you're just mixing it. Yeah, I love it. So what was that first one? The Four Tops one?
It's called I Can't Help Myself.
Help Myself. I know the one you mean. So what scale is that you're playing? What scale is that from?
Oh, the last one?
No, Four Tops one.
Oh, the first one, it's called I Can't Help Myself.
But what scale is it in?
It's basically, I'm thinking of intervals. You play the root, and then the fifth and the sixth, but the fifth is lower,
Right.
and that's the thing that you go down to the fifth, and then up using the major sixth. But there's so many that fingering that's so useful to be like. So it's just all over the place. So you don't really know exactly what scale it is, because you're not hearing all the notes, and that's where you have to use your instinct or the melody. So you have to know, like, what kind of third is it? Da, 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 da. So the melody's playing the third. So you get so far, and now what kind of seventh is it? Because that's the thing, you have to decide whether it's Mixolydian. So is it or, and you know what? Actually, here's the answer that's crazy. A lot of times it's better without any seventh.
Okay.
And then a lot of times, like so often, you don't want any seventh at all. It's just better to not include it, because both of them sound a little sour. And that's where, if you've been playing scales all your life,
yeah,
you have to like undo your finger habits, because it's like, man, I've been practicing this seventh and I'm not supposed to use it all of a sudden. Well, that's hard, because my habit is to play it. So you get in the habit of playing these like really common melodic phrases, and at some point you label them. You go, okay, well, there's your root, you know where it is, and then it's 5 and 6, and then you could also do the root and the 5 and 6 higher, which would be, that's Happy Trails. Bum-ba-dee-da-bum, happy trails to you. Or it's also the boogie, or it's also California Girls. Well, East Coast girls are hip by really. Or and the other thing is to know, it's like to contrast that, you instead of the major 6, play the minor 6, and that's Crazy Train or Operation Mindcrime. I mean, the key's wrong, but you learn the relative melody.
The melody is the same. It's insane to think how it's all connected, isn't it? And just like you say, the repetition of it all. It's quite, it does make it feel easier when you say that. It kind of makes me think, okay, I definitely need to go out there and start learning more songs, because that's not what I haven't done that. So I need to do that. One thing that I noticed recently is that you're known as a shredder, but you have evolved so much more than that. Recently you've gone more into the blues world. You've started playing with slide, which I don't think you've done before, have you? With the slide.
Yeah. Well, slide is part of it is like the technical part, learning how to move it. But the other part of it really is like knowing blues melodies and knowing what those sound like, because slide is not particularly good for scales. If you try to go, it just sounds wobbly. But if you know, I started by just learning like blues vocal motives, like Mercedes Benz by Janis Joplin. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? Or like a Mr. Big song, like the "To Be With You" is hold on, little girl. And those, that's really a different way of playing than playing through the scale, because and almost the tricky thing is like about half the time you don't hit the note dead on. You've got to hit below it and then come up to it. So because that if you go you gotta aim away from the target and then curve it in. So that takes some getting used to.
It's kind of like vibrato in a way. You have to, well, we're bending it up. I guess you're kind of doing the same.
You could with your hand. You could bend it too, and this is the same thing. Is you got to put your hand in the wrong place so you can bend it to the right place.
Yeah, crazy. So I'd love to know what you struggled with in the beginning when you first started playing.
Well, I didn't know how to play the guitar, so so everything, I didn't have when I first started really practicing a lot, I was by myself. I didn't have a teacher at that time, and so I didn't even know how to tune. So I only played the low string because that was the loudest one. I had an acoustic, and I wanted it to be loud, so that was loud. And then in order to reach that string, I was 9 years old, so my hands, I had big hands for a 9-year-old, but they were still small hands. So to get your hand all the way to that low string, I needed the longest finger, and that's your second finger. So I used only that finger because that was the longest one. So I had the biggest string, longest finger, and then for some reason I only picked up. I don't know what. Maybe that was louder too. I don't know why. But for like 2 years, I was trying to figure out Led Zeppelin riffs, going only up, only one finger, only one string, and I was like. And it was pretty limited. I had a lot of limitations because of that. But yeah. The good part of it was after 2 years, I was really good at this finger had become really confident. Like I had like some authority with that one finger. It had gotten a lot of use, and I had a lot of authority on that one string, and I had a lot of authority with my upstroke. So when at that point I started taking lessons again, and my teacher kind of looked at me like, man, you're weird, But he also he said, try a downstroke and try your other fingers, and here I'll show you how to tune and try the other string. And when I tried those other things, I had a sense of how of what kind of confidence I needed to have. Because it's nice being confident. It feels good to be confident. And I wasn't willing to give that up when I went into these new areas. And so I kind of went slowly into those new areas, and that's the thing, with like so much information being available on the internet, people go, okay, well, I'm going to get the tab for an Ingve song, and I'm just going to start. And it's like, man, I spent a year playing, and I spent about a year getting a D chord right, But when I had it right, I had it right, so that was my early memories of playing in bands. Was we played simple songs, but we played them pretty good. I was doing like Take the Money and Run by the Steve Miller Band, or just like. But I could rock it, I could do 3 chords, but I had some authority, and that would get me into the band. I could play with the older kids, because I could do something simple good. And I remember like there, in the local music scene, there was one guy. My drummer knew him. And he's like, "Oh, he's going to come over this afternoon, and he's so fast. Wait to hear Tony. He's unbelievable. He's so fast." And so Tony came over, and played incredibly fast, but it was sloppy. And I kind of heard it, went like, that's nice for you, but I don't want to. If it's sloppy, I don't want to do it. I'll just wait and get it right later. And so I had I don't know if it was even patient. It was like I just didn't want to do it unless it sounded good. And if there's anything that it's hard to teach that, because I'll see my students trying stuff and I'll go like, you shouldn't be like,
Yeah.
don't even do that.
No, I get it. So when did you get fast then? How did you get fast? Because like you're always in these lists of like top.
Well, when you go from one finger to 4 fingers, or really, I shouldn't say 4. You go from 1 finger to 2 fingers. Your speed is doubled right there.
Yeah. Your whole world is open. It's a whole new world.
And so my guitar teacher showed me like real basic pentatonic stuff, like. And I kind of got that together. And probably the first lick was like Sweet Leaf. At the end of Sweet Leaf, there's that part where the band goes to that faster part. It's like 1, 2, 3. And that lick was like the first kind of hammer-on pull-off. And he just does it over and over again. And you only need 2 fingers. But the trick with that is you have to coordinate where the pick notes are and what they are. Like, is it up? Is it down? Is it? And the way I do that, I figured out a way to do that really worked. And it was easy. I didn't have to muscle through it. So no individual finger is really going all that fast. It's like the balance of this works a little bit, and this works a little bit. Nobody really. It's not like you got to muscle through it and just go with one thing as fast as you can. It's all has a flow to it, and it doesn't really take a lot of effort. Well, the other thing is hand position. And this is a big deal. Like I was a Jimmy Page fan, so I always had my guitar real low. And when I think most guitar players, if you see somebody playing low, you think, oh, that's hard to do. You can't get your hand under. Maybe it looks cool, but it's hard to do. But it puts your hand in a position where your wrist can push the fingers. Because right now I'm not bending my fingers like that. I'm moving them by rotating the wrist, and that's the position that works really well when the guitar is lower. It's harder to do that when the guitar gets up there. When the guitar is high, it tends to be like the fingers moving.
Okay.
And that to me, like if there's a culture war that I'm embroiled in, it's fingers moving versus wrist moving. and I'm completely on in the wrist camp, you know, because that was like everybody from Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Brian May, Uli Roth, you know, all the cool '70s, Van Halen, Yngwie.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody from Hendrix to Yngwie is a wrist player, and their fingers, you know, fingers are doing something, but it's being driven by the wrist, and the wrist has a lot more power. It's a lot bigger than your little finger, and it's just and you have to get used to that. But that's what drives the vibrato. It's the wrist, and a sign of that is that the thumb tends to hang over. And it's not really that it's not really the thumb doing the work. It's just that that's where it is when the wrist is in the right spot. And so, but somehow, like in the mid '80s, people started wearing their guitars up high, and it started becoming like more classical.
Hmm.
You know, if you're playing a classical guitar with no distortion, that's fine. But if you're trying to control this fire-breathing sound, it's much harder to get the strings muted. And you see people compensating for it. They'll have like a sock. You know, that's making up for the fact that they can't mute with the left hand because they're not using the wrist. So it's just this whole slew of problems.
Hang on, you can mute with your left hand.
Yeah, that's why, you know, I can bang away. I'm playing everything, but only one note's coming out. So if you want to play like the best scale in the world is this. That's how you play a scale. You know, to be like this, like real careful. That's like so useless. You know, it's like,
can I get my guitar so you can show me that quickly? Because I have never done it that way before. Hang on. I haven't tuned this, so
yeah.
So what? So you just go rather than. So rather than.
So let's try this. Let's start easy.
Oh, let's do it here again.
We're gonna start easy. So take your third finger.
Yeah.
And play E on the 7th fret.
Still have to count 3.
7th fret.
7th fret, yeah.
And then use your 3rd finger to play E.
Play E, okay.
It's on the 5th string.
On the 5th string.
Yeah, you got it. Now use your 3rd finger. That's your 1st finger. There you go. You got it. Okay, so that's your starting point, but we're gonna do more. You're not done.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Okay. There's a lot more to do. Now, when you have your finger there, now your finger has got a lot of skin on it. Go down a little bit and play the note there. Yeah, oh. And your fingertip is going to touch the string above it. Yeah. So your fingertip needs to lightly touch the string above it. And that way it mutes that string out.
Yeah.
Now there's more. Take your 2 other fingers and put them all together. You're going to make a giant finger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So put them all on the same string. They can wad together. They don't have to be separated between the frets. They can all, but make it comfortable. They don't have to be in the same fret as well.
Oh, they don't.
Just the 3rd finger gets the note. 3rd finger gets the note. So it has to go down. It's up too far. Move it to your left. It's up to. There you go. Yeah. Now the other fingers don't have to squeeze in that tight.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just more.
Yeah, they can be spread out. Just spread them out so they're comfortable. There you go. That's perfect.
Okay.
That I call that the giant finger, and now you got some power. Now, if you want to use your wrist, you're going to be able to have a better chance of moving that around. Now, try to keep your finger joints the same. Yeah, there you go. Now you're not quite ready because you're still using your joints. And what I want to do is get you to use your wrist. And here's how you do it. take, right now you're kind of parallel with the fret.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And what you want to do is you want to angle your arm kind of away from yourself. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what'll happen is the side of your hand will touch the bottom of the neck. So you're not parallel, you're like, you go to the side. Now, almost. Can you do it even more? Like twist your wrist.
Haven't I? Stick it down.
Yeah. Put all three in there. Spread them out so they're comfy. They're a little too tight, yeah. And then you twist it so this part touches the bottom of the neck.
Yeah, that's on the bottom.
Yeah, like that. And look, your thumb's over now. Now your thumb's over, which is cool.
Do you know, this is odd for me, because the last year, like obviously since I started playing, my teacher has told me off about my thumb and always says, get it back.
Not if you want to play rock.
Not
if you want to play rock.
Too much. Okay. Let's thumb it up, baby.
Now there's more. There's more. This is really important. This part of your fingers right here, the kind of like the palm of your hand part of your fingers, that's going to rest lightly on the strings and mute them all out.
Okay.
So they kind of flatten out over those higher, thinner, skinnier strings. Yeah. And now you lightly, if it'll reach, if it doesn't reach, it's okay. I've got another solution, but try with your thumb, just lightly rest it on the low E string. Yeah.
I got big hands.
And that's great. That's awesome. That's how you play rock right there. And now you should be able, in theory, to strum every string, all 6, and only one note's going to come through.
Right. Okay. Let's have a look. See what happens, shall we?
That is great. Look at that. That's awesome.
Oh, they're all ringing. So you're kind of muting them.
So your goal is to get it where you're just playing that one note and everything else is muted by the left hand, and you're banging away like that.
Oh, God.
And it's okay if you don't get it perfect at first, but you're really close to it.
So basically, I strum. Well, yeah, play every string.
And only that one will come through. So watch. And then there's my hand.
Yeah.
I see how that's touching.
Yeah.
And then the giant fingers on there, they're all wadded together. And then thumbs over. And go watch Led Zeppelin and go watch Jimi Hendrix, and they'll be doing that.
Yeah.
And they're like strumming everything like. That you can't. That's so different than how classical is played.
You can speed it up.
That's so much fun. It's so rewarding to be able to go, and not care, not have to be like careful. And so, this thing is. I mean, there's some great players that do that. Not everybody has to play like Hendrix. Yeah. If you watch a player like Steve Hackett from Genesis, he came from the classical world and he plays electric like a classical player. He's got it up high, and his motions are small, and he's a great writer. And within those limitations that technique gives him, he plays beautifully. And again, if I play classical guitar, it's a total disaster. But from the Hendrix school. This is the magic, and you're grabbing the whole thing and controlling the whole battle is like playing one note and controlling the other 5. Because as soon as you get a fire breathing guitar sound, those other 5 are going to start taking off and making noise, and you have to, you're responsible for that. And you see people putting a sock up there or something, and it's not really. You can do it with your hand. Your hand can do it.
Yeah, and you're right. Like this whole grabbing, I am controlling this. I'm holding it. It's mine. Come on, let's go. That kind of, you feel.
I've set you on a good path.
Oh, yes, you have. I love it. I'm going to be in so much trouble on Friday when Pav, my guitar teacher, sees me.
You're going to get scolded by a guitar teacher, but then just say, hey, let's put on YouTube. Let's watch some Hendrix.